Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 125.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow game, Jay Massey.
All right, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and you know what I am excited about? I'm excited about change. It's that time of year where you're probably thinking about it. In fact, you're like, I wish I had more change in my pocket after all this shopping. Most importantly, one of the things that we must learn to change, and I think this is a very appropriate time for this conversation. One of the things we must learn to change is our mindset and our habits and behaviors around how and why we use our finances. And today's guest, I'm telling you, is going to rock your mind. And what's important about this is understanding is that without this foundation, this foundational information, it will sabotage you as you go out there to try to write more offers, build bigger businesses. It's going to come back to bite you one way or the other. But at the end of the day, there's something you can do about it. And that's what we're going to learn today from today's guest. Today's guest is an author, coach, and she also assists business women as well as men, all right, who has helped thousands of people understand what they do with their money and how they alter their financial behaviors. And understand this. You may think money is a lot about, how much you make and how much you keep and the tax strategies and all these other things. But I'm telling you, behavioral finance has become a topic that's become greatly interesting to me, and I think you're going to love it. She's the founder of the popular website prosperityplace.com, and her book, Build Your Money Muscles, 9 simple, keyword, exercises for improving your relationship with money, won 2 national awards. You're like, I have a relationship with money? You absolutely do. So help me welcome Miss Joan Sotkin. Joan?
Hi there. It's good to be here today.
I'm glad that you are here. I'm actually over the moon excited. I know the challenge that we're going to have today is to keep things, direct and short, because you cover a topic that I think has the ability to affect so many people worldwide, everywhere, and it's just that important. So, but I've got to ask this. Before you were an author, before you were a coach, and you were assisting all these individuals, before all that, I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs like, yesterday's superheroes. And, superheroes, they fly around, they run around and save people, putting on tights and all this good stuff. But every superhero has an alternate identity, an alter ego. They started some way. Now, I'm assuming you didn't get bit by a spider to get your superhuman powers, but I would love to know, before you began, who was Joan?
Well, Joan was a mess.
Now we like it. Honesty. This is good.
People say, what are your credentials? I say, I was really screwed up and now I'm fine. And the journey was what I learned. I didn't learn it in a book. I didn't learn it at school. I had to learn it to get my act together. Way back in the 70s, I had 2 millionaire brothers and I couldn't rub 2 pennies together.
Wow.
And I said, what is this? I had already been into metaphysics and had come to believe that we create our own reality. And so my question was, if I create my own reality, why did I choose this one? I was sick physically, emotionally, and certainly financially. And so I started asking the question. And that has been my search all these years. How do we do this? Why does one person get to be a millionaire and another person doesn't? What are the personal traits that it takes? And what I've come to believe is that our emotions are the creative force behind our life stories. and that the emotions that start early in childhood are the ones we're acting out later in life through our life stories and especially through our money. So it goes way back then, but it's just been this thread that's moved along.
Interesting. So are you saying that my money habits, I can blame my parents? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Not exactly, because I don't know anyone who got perfect parents. And it's not the story, it's how you react to the story that creates who you are. And it's like when you're a tiny little baby and someone says something, does something, you react automatically and you don't say to yourself, well, what are my options here? And you react once that way and a second time and a third time until it becomes a habit. And you don't even think by the time you're an adult that there are alternate ways of responding to familiar stimuli. So, but once you become aware of it, then you can start making real choices. And can we blame it on our parents if you want to do the blame game? But I find it much more productive to say, okay, why do I need this? Why am I going through what I'm going through? And for me, the answer always is to express a certain set of feelings that I have never fully expressed. And so I'm expressing those feelings through my life stories and my money. I think money is the greatest thing to use for personal growth and development, particularly if you want to get in touch with your emotional self, even if you don't have an emotional vocabulary.
Yeah, emotional vocabulary. That's a whole new class, and I'm sure for that one. Now, but you said something that was very interesting to me, and I don't know if anyone caught it. You said, once you're aware, we can begin to make real choices. That would suggest that most of us either A, aren't aware, or B, aren't making real choices. What do you mean by that?
Or both. Well, as I said, when you're a kid, you start reacting automatically to certain situations. And particularly if there was any kind of abuse or neglect, a parent was an alcoholic, they weren't there emotionally. I mean, all these things we can say about our parents, they affected us. And some of us respond with, well, I'm going to show them. And other people respond with, well, I better withdraw. And those habits become how we deal with the world around us, as well as how we deal with our family situation. So it becomes our habit. It's not who we are. It's just how we behave. And once we realize that these are habits that developed in early childhood, then it kind of eliminates the need for a certain amount of therapy. And you can say, okay, I don't like feeling this way. What would I rather feel instead? And then you can create new neural pathways in your brain so that you change your responses. So it's got to be done with consciousness, but you can make that choice. You have to be willing to give up your old identity and all those old habits, which is not always easy, but it can be done.
Ooh, I hope you guys are. I'm sitting here, I'm taking notes and going so fast because one of the things that, at least that I've learned, Joan, is the fact that there is no force greater than that human desire to stick with whatever identity we may believe we have. And the fact is, you're giving us the tools to actually consciously and purposefully manipulate and, dare I say, change that to be exactly whatever it is that we want to be. What I find interesting is you said something that I was like, it's not who we are, it's how we behave. How does one get to the point to where they can learn to separate those two concepts from themselves, you know? Because I know many of us are probably guilty of saying, well, I always do this or I'm this way. How does one grow to the point to be able to separate those two things?
Well, you can't. First of all, there are some things that I am this way. I'm a talker. Always have been a talker. I spent most of the second grade in the cloakroom because they couldn't shut me up. They didn't know I was practicing my craft.
Right.
And so I'm a talker. Not everybody is. So we have certain traits that are inborn, and they're beginning to see that certain personality traits are actually genetic. So we're not trying to change our whole persona, but it's our identity. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when my identity, I was the identified patient in the family. It was always, what's the matter with Joni? I was always getting rescued. No matter what I did, I was sick, and I got all my attention from having to go to the doctor. And that became part of my identity. I was also very allergic to sugar and was a suicidal depressive for 15 years until 2 days after I gave up sugar. I wasn't depressed anymore. So, so that's a whole nother story. And I had to learn how not to be a depressive personality because that had been part of me for so long. And but there are certain things about your identity. It's like my identity was poor Joni. What's the matter with Joni? She's got to get rescued all the time. And everybody around me underscored that identity. So for me to become a successful person, a successful, healthy person, I had to re-perceive myself as that. I remember when I first decided to do this way back when, I used to do this affirmation. I'm perfectly healthy and can eat whatever I want. I'm perfectly healthy. And I would do that 4 or 5 hours a day to convince myself that I was a healthy person. And I began to notice my behaviors that were the behaviors of a sick person. And I had to look at them one by one and begin to change them. Now, the problem is when you begin to change your identity and who you are in relation to the world, you get what I call the moving stupids. When,
Okay.
when you move from one house to another, you really want to be in the new house, but you get really stupid. You don't know where anything is. You bump into walls. You lose your wallet. You lose your keys because change is disorienting. So when I'm working with people and they start making the change and they begin to resist it, I say, well, do you recognize that you've got the moving stupids and you're going back to a familiar place so that you don't have this disorientation, which often lasts for a couple of months. And as you begin to develop the habits of this new persona, because the old habits aren't going to work for the old persona.
No. And that's, oh, and that's, you just said what I've been trying. People who know me well know that when I get excited, I get tongue tied. All the words get stuck right at my mouth at the same time. And what you just said is so key. I mean, people ask me all the time, Jay, you were squatting a bank-owned property. Your wife couldn't eat or drink. You had never done real estate before. No one in your family has a history of earning anything significant in terms of money. How on earth did you make that switch? And what you just said is exactly that. And I began this process of identity change. But you also said something earlier that I think is interesting, and I want to hear your perspective. You said you grew up with 2 millionaire brothers?
They became, yes, I had one that was a brilliant businessman. He worked in corporate first and then had his own business and made a big fortune. The other one was a big-time Hollywood producer and made phenomenal amounts of money. And there I was, and I couldn't figure out who I was or what I was supposed to be.
Interesting. So it I guess that clears up is if it's genetic, it's not even that.
And that was my question. And now I did create a business. In the 1980s, I had a business called Joan's Crystals. I was the first one to market crystals and minerals for healing and meditation nationwide. And I had a line of stones called Joan stones that were in 600 stores. Healing stones, psychic stones, serenity stones. And they were basically a course in meditation and how to use these stones to manifest certain things. I was one of the originators of the New Age stuff. And I made a lot of money. I actually got to the point where I was bringing in $30,000 a month. In today's money, that's about $50,000 a month. And I went bankrupt because I had no idea how to manage cash flow. So I got it from both ends. There I was in this depressive state. I was already going to 12-step programs to find out what the heck was going on. And that's how I learned everything that I teach today, because I really saw that you can wish for money, you can make a lot of money, but if you don't know how to manage your cash flow, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So in essence, this is the same symptom, if you will, or of those who either win the lottery or just given a lot of money. All of these things you're saying. So I love this. This is great. So
that's the identity factor. In other words, if I've never had a lot of money and I suddenly have a lot of money, first of all, everybody's after you for your money when you win the lottery, and you haven't learned the habits of a wealthy person. And one of those habits is saying no and then learning how to manage your cash flow. And they wind up with all this money. Their relatives are treating them differently. Their friends are treating them differently. And they begin to feel separate and alone, even though they have all this money. So they make it go away.
Yeah. Oh, man. And the interesting thing about this is it's those habits. Those are the things that are, in my opinion, simply significantly way more valuable than actually the learning how to earn and create more value in the marketplace, because we can go create that value. But as you just said, that value can leave us just as fast, if not faster, and often in a worse position than we originally started for those very same reasons. So if that's the case, how does a person put up some roadblocks and for this? Because when we're dealing with real estate, when we're out there writing offers, it's not like, hey, you're only going to earn, a little bit of money. For most people, it's going to be life-changing amounts in very short periods of times when they begin to get this thing down. So, and that's what I always tell people. Imagine whatever it is you used to earn on an annual basis, now earn that a month. And that's kind of what you have the potential for being able to do. What can I do? What can anyone do to prepare themselves to be in a position to when that happens?
Well, first of all, you have to realize you are going to have the moving stupids.
Yeah, I could talk a lot about the moving stupids for sure. I didn't know that's what they were called, but I like the name because it's very, very accurate.
Okay, so because what happens is when you start making more money, it's uncomfortable. And you can't say to people, gee, I'm really uncomfortable because I'm making all this money. And because they always say, I wish I had that problem.
Right.
So again, you begin to feel separate and alone. And so you do things to mess it up so that you don't have to deal with the money. So I think the best thing to do is to prepare yourself for making money. How do you do this? First of all, and this is not a mindset thing, you learn how to count your money and manage money. You learn how to keep track of your earnings and expenses. And if you're not willing to do that, then I don't think you're willing to be rich. Because you have to have a financial awareness in order to be a wealthy person. And one of the things I learned when I didn't have a lot after I had gone through all this was that not having is the perfect time to learn how to manage money. Because as soon as you get into surplus, every dollar is a decision. And when you just have enough to manage the basics, you learn how to do that. And the problem is when people start making more money, they start looking at their wish list and they buy everything they ever wanted. And the problem is, if you've had a longing habit or a dissatisfaction habit, no matter how much money you have, you're not going to satisfy that habit because that's your habit. You have to decide to learn to be satisfied, to give up that longing, which is so present in so many people who want wealth. So there are two ways to prepare yourself. One is with the actual financial skills. I think you absolutely need them. And you also, when you don't have the money, start looking at the different things you're going to do with your money. How much money are you going to have in a savings account or a cushion account before you start investing? Because you don't want to take your last $20,000 and put it into real estate. You still want a cushion, because the idea is to create something so that you're not in financial fear. The second thing is to really look at your money feelings. When you look at your bank balance today, what do you feel? A lot of people just feel shame, which is why they don't look at their bank balance. Well, that shame has nothing to do with your money. That's one of those feeling habits that you're bringing with you to your money. You're using your money to act out the shame. So you want to make sure before you start making a lot of money that you've dealt with the issues that before this you've been acting out through your money. And again, this takes awareness and a conscious desire to shift your habits from the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like this concept of money feelings. I guess that's similar to the idea of retail therapy. To the same, to a
well,
degree.
It's a little different. And for those of you who don't have a good feeling vocabulary, I work with a lot of men, and they don't come to me and say, well, this is what I'm feeling, and these are the overtones. And, okay. So let me give you a simple way of figuring out your money feelings. All right. So a couple of things to do is either look at your bank balance, or when you get a bill in the mail or by email, whatever the bill is, you start thinking about bills you have to pay. Just close your eyes and become aware of the kinesthetic experience in your physical body of what you're experiencing when you think about your money. Notice whether you feel contracted or expanded. Do you feel a little flutter in your heart of anticipation or of fear? What is the kinesthetic experience that you're having? That's your money feeling. And you don't have to have a single label for it, because feelings rarely exist in their pure form by themselves.
Right. I was participating along, and a smile came to my face. I was feeling like I was winning a race, for lack of a better way of putting it. And it's just interesting.
Okay, so you got an adrenal rush.
Sure.
Okay, and for me, I think that you have to become aware of your adrenal rushes.
Right.
Because there's good adrenaline and there's fear adrenaline. And it's those excess adrenal responses that get people sick in the long run.
And that's also why Jay has learned to not go to the Apple Store as frequently as he used to. That's all I'm going to say on that. Many people know. And at the end of the day, it has been this process of learning. It's been a serious process for me. You know, you come from the world I come from, and then as you go through these stages, you're just like, wow, this is crazy. And you start hiring people, and you start paying people, and you have investors, and you've got people who now you pay that earn more than you used to earn. And you're just like, oh my, when you were an employee, you're just like, it's a completely different world. But yet these basic things are things that we're all going to face in some form or another. And I'm enthralled with what with like everything that you're saying, because it's like, yes, I wish, where was Joan 2 years ago? Where was Joan 3 years ago? You know what, Joan, that would have been helpful a little bit ago, but it's okay. The point is you're here today. So as we go out there and prepare ourselves, to earn, more money, provide more value, what do you think, like, is there a routine? Is there what is the checks and balances? How do we keep ourselves in the right position, in the right mindsets to be able to go out there and achieve more than what we currently experience today without shipwrecking ourselves?
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host, Jay Massey, has some important insights to share with you.
Okay. If you've been listening, you know that we've been doing the series on essential skills, and you're like, what is this? Well, at the end of the day, here's what happened. I was so moved by the information that was being shared that I was like, you know what? I can't wait. I've got to get this information out sooner. And that's exactly where you go. I know if you go over to the site, you may not see the show notes just yet. It's because we bumped it up in terms of the production schedule. So they're coming. All right. They're coming because there are going to be a number of resources here in just a minute that we're going to be talking about. And I want to make sure that you do get over there to them. So I'm preparing you now. Go grab a pen and piece of paper so that you can write them down. But they will be in the show notes later. So anyway, let's get back to it.
Okay. So I don't know that you can keep yourself in one place, because when you get to point A, then there's just these levels that keep coming up, and it's a whole learning process. It's not just about money; it's about yourself, because money is just a symbol of relationships, and how you deal with money is how you deal with your relationship with yourself and others, and how you feel about yourself, how you feel about others, it all gets tied in with your money. So to me, it's a matter of simplifying. First of all, I think it's absolutely essential that people who choose meditate every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes, where you take your focus from the outer world to the inner world so that you can become familiar with that inner self. That inner self also houses your intuition. And the more aware you become of this inner environment, the better able you will be to follow your intuition rather than what someone else is telling you what's right for you. And one of the things you get in touch with when you do this are this kinesthetic experience of your feelings. When you talked about the Apple Store, one of the rules I had to make for myself was when I really wanted something and I had that feeling in my chest that I really had to have it, I'm not allowed to buy
it. Right.
No matter how much money is in the bank,
right.
I have to wait at least 3 days.
Yeah.
And wait for the feeling to pass. The same thing used to happen to me when I used to open that refrigerator door one more time and I was overeating. I had to make the decision that I wasn't going to eat when I had that feeling of I gotta have it in my chest, because that's the old self that is longing, that is pushing you, that is doing that adrenal thing. If I don't make more money, no one's going to love me.
Right.
Well, that's not true. No. And you have to. So to me, along with goals, the SMART goals and how much money you want to make, I think it's necessary to have feeling goals. What is it I want to feel? Well, I know that I want to experience inner peace. I know an awful lot of wealthy people who are not peaceful inside. They worry about losing what they have. They're always after more. They have no idea what enough is. And I was brought up with enough wealthy people around me to see that being wealthy and being in a perfect state are not necessarily coexistent. And so what I have chosen for myself is to regulate the speed at which I move forward. And anytime I feel the least bit of stress, I stop. And I'll spend extra time meditating. I don't turn my computer on Sundays. I make sure to go for a walk every single day. There are certain things I've set up for myself so I don't fall into the trap of needing more and more and more and moving too fast. One of the reasons I went bankrupt is I went from having practically nothing to earning $30,000 a month in 4 years. And I just had no idea how to be that person. Right. I mean, and at the time there was no internet. There weren't coaches.
there wasn't an ebook you could go get.
No. And when I went to the bank, they thought it was cute that this woman was making all this money selling crystals. And so they just kept lending me more money. And so I just had a bigger bankruptcy. So I really learned that you can grow too fast, right, that you have to regulate your growth. And what I'm trying to do now is help people not make the mistakes that people often make when they're becoming wealthy, because 9 times out of 10, they'll get uncomfortable and lose a significant portion of what they've gained.
We can talk about that later. Right. Well, the audience knows they've heard the stories of the guy who we had an embezzler a few years ago. It was about $800,000, and it was not cool. It's not fun to go through that process. The team came together, and it was great. We've become a better person. But something that something that you said that I think was very, very key for everybody to understand is, and I think I've thought about this too. It's one thing to be call yourself financially disciplined when you don't have a surplus. That's not necessarily the financial discipline you're talking about today. And I've had to do similar things. And I just set a budget. Hey, this is what I can spend on whatever I want to spend every week. This is it. Anything beyond that, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And I just stay within that number, and everybody's happy, and everything kind of works, and things move forward. I feel freer. I don't feel like I'm spending too much. I don't feel like I'm being trapped. I've got that freedom, that discipline. I think is a lot of what you're referring to, because we as I say American citizens, people, we have access to so much, and that there's very few people who are going to tell us no. We have to be the ones to tell us no in order to continue to provide the good, valuable skills and services that we provide to other individuals.
Well, often I'll say to a person, well, how much money do you want to make? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is $2 million. For some reason, people think that that's a lot of money. Yeah. And they'll say $2 million. Sure. And I'll say, why do you want $2 million? Because then I won't have to worry about money. I won't have to think about my money. Surprise. Yeah. That's not true. No, and there's this fantasy that if you have a lot, you never have to worry about what you're buying and how you're spending it. And people think in terms of spending. They don't think in terms of building security. They think that having X number of dollars is security, but the minute you have it, you start spending it and you don't have it anymore. And you start seeing it dwindling, and you start getting afraid that you're not going to wind up with any. And
then you got to protect it. And then that's a whole,
a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother story. It's not, I hear exactly what you're saying. And there was something, I think it was Donald Trump who said something like, I don't know where I read it. He said something about, even in the good times, spend like it's the bad times or something of that nature.
Yes, I've heard that quote.
I'm like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world all the time. So, you've done this for a while. I guess you've had to have run across individuals who are dealing with some of the negative sides, not just the negative emotional sides, but they've gotten themselves into a situation. Maybe they have, credit card situations. They've got car loans or houses or toys or all these other things. How do they deal with the things that are slowing down their progress? What's your method to being able to free themselves from those types of shackles?
Well, first of all, you got to find out why you need to be in debt. Now, this is going to sound strange, but remember, I said you create your life story in order to act out a set of emotions. I was a chronic debtor. My father was a chronic debtor. So I really had to look at this. And one of the biggest feelings behind carrying a lot of debt is the feeling of aloneness. If I owe you money, you're not going to forget about me. It's a way of connecting. And if I lend you money, you're not going to forget about me. It's the lender and the debtor have a relationship that satisfies both of them. So, for example, the other day I was talking to someone who said she quit her job to go into a coaching business. Her husband had lost his job. And at this point, their only income is his disability pension. This was someone on the other side of the world. And she thought she was going to make enough money from her coaching business to become the primary breadwinner. And I had to give her a reality check. That's not what's going to happen. And what I saw immediately was, and until you let go of the anger you feel towards your husband for putting you in this position.
Yeah.
She was doing what I call self-directed passive-aggressive behavior. She was angry because he had put her in this position and she couldn't express it. So by not be earning either, she's putting him in an uncomfortable position. So passive-aggressive behavior is where you get to control the other person's feelings. And so there's this dynamic between the two of them that had to be addressed before she could move forward. And the debt, and they had $500 left in a bank account. And I said, you have to go out and get a job, a part-time job. She knew how to build websites. I said, go build 2 websites so that you can get the extra money that you need every month. So it's recognizing why you need to be in the situation you're in. If you don't mind, I want to go back for a second to your embezzlement.
Oh, by all means.
Okay.
Let's do this. I'm sure somebody out there is going, yeah, Joan, ask him questions. Go for it.
Okay. So my question would be, why did I need this? Now, remember, there's always a set of emotions behind the life event. And so I would say, well, what were you feeling? And I'd guess that you were feeling betrayed.
Yeah.
Okay. Abandoned.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a whole feeling gestalt, a whole group of feelings that you were feeling. And I bet there was a time in your past where you had that same set of feelings.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what the interesting thing is. I've been taking lots of behavioral finance, lots of information recently. And this has been a recurring theme, how things so long ago are affecting the decisions I do or don't make, for that matter, today. And that's why the whole comment of you saying, us being aware it struck me, because I've become aware of way more things and going, maybe that's why I made that decision. Maybe that's why I didn't hire that person. Maybe that's why I didn't buy that building, or maybe that's why I didn't go create that job, or that's why we responded this way or bought that item, and it's just this continual evolution of understanding my own self, as well as how I choose to relate to my responsibilities and the things that are out there in the world. And I think all of us, to some degree, are going through these things, and occasionally it takes a large event to wake us up to those things. And
well, I think every single one of these events They're not good. They're not bad. They just are what they are. It's when you think that you have negative emotions. I never use that expression. They're just emotions. And how you have created your life is not good or bad. It's just what you've done. And if you say, well, the emotions are the creative force, then each time something uncomfortable happens, you can say, well, what is it I'm feeling? Because the system that I use is recognize, release, and replace. Okay, so once you say, what am I feeling? So with the embezzlement, I'm feeling betrayed, I'm feeling abandoned, I'm feeling overwhelmed, whatever that feeling gestalt was, and you let yourself fully feel the feelings. Now, most people do everything they can to stop feeling it. They'll go buy something, they'll do some drugs or alcohol or whatever. The idea is to fully experience the feeling. And there are a number of techniques I use for doing that. And so once you express the feeling, you're releasing them because emotions by their nature want to be expressed. John Bradshaw used to call them emotions, energy and motion. And, the emotions are caused when neuropeptides, these little things inside your system, attach themselves to receptors. And in the cells, and if you don't release those neuropeptides, they kind of build up in your system. And once you express the feeling and you go, that's really awful, then you're expressing the emotion. It's like when you watch babies, they're happy one minute and screaming the next and happy the next minute. We all have that ability, but we've forgotten how to shift. So recognize, release, and replace. And okay, so what could you feel in that situation other than betrayal, other than abandonment? You can put yourself in that other person's position and see their wounded child, which made them do what they're doing. And you can and you probably did this, you can take rational steps to do what you can to heal the situation. But the important point is for you to become aware of the feelings, the emotions that subconsciously created the situation. You needed something to express that feeling of betrayal, and surprise, you drew in all the characters you needed for that drama. You're like the producer and the casting director, okay?
Right.
And everybody in that story got what they needed at that moment in time to become who they're becoming. Yeah. So it's not bad, because if you hadn't gone through that, there's something you're teaching today that you wouldn't be teaching had you not gone through that.
Yeah, we're going to call that nearly everything.
Okay. And given your background, and any minority group, I was brought up Jewish, which is a minority group. And you schlep along all the cultural beliefs with you as you move along. And so part of this identity shift is understanding all those things that go into who you are. And it's complicated. We're multidimensional. We just see the 3 dimensions, but we're multidimensional beings. And this is the most incredible adventure. Once we take the good and bad out of it, and once we just see the adventure, it's amazing. And once you realize that you had the power to create that embezzlement story, you'll see that you have the power to create whatever story you want.
Yep. And I don't want anyone to think that happened in 15 minutes or inside of a podcast episode. I have a wonderful team that helped literally, and that's what I call it, put me back together, because that was.
And that's what you needed. You needed to believe that you could be supported on that level.
And you know what's.
And you got it.
I did.
Good job.
I did.
Good job.
I definitely did. My team is awesome. I mean, and I talk about them everywhere I go. People think Jay's great. No, I got great people right, here listening and helping to tell the story and let other people know that, it's possible. At the end of the day, Joan, the stuff that you're saying, I think I wish more people know, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs. So answer me this.
Yes.
I've run into so many people who say things to me like, I want to be a real estate entrepreneur. I want to be this thing that you represent, Jay. I want to be that. How can I do that? How I don't have this and I don't have that. And they're so focused on what they don't have. And, be that money, credit, time. It doesn't really matter. The excuse, I'm too old. I've heard I'm too old. I've heard I'm too young. I've heard I'm too busy. I've heard I've got nothing. It doesn't matter. It's just like, my question is, because I perceive all of those as forms of fear being an emotion.
Right.
That's
and they're
how I perceive it.
They're excuses for not getting out of your current identity.
And okay, so yeah, that's what I want. I wanted to hear what your thought process was on that, because I'm just like, it's the number one thing that comes up with nearly every person that I work with. Like right now, we're running a mastermind group, and everybody wants to buy apartment buildings. I'm like, cool, great, let's go buy apartment buildings. And I'm different. I'm not very theory. If people want to learn about something, they can go read a book. If you want to go get something done, I'm going to walk you through that process. That's what a mastermind group to me is for. I'm going to walk you through this process of getting this result, which means by week 3, week 3, I had like, okay, cool, it's time to write offers. They're like, but I don't know this. And I'm like, you don't need to know that. It doesn't matter yet. Go write offers. It brought up all of the fears, and we've been dealing with all of the fears, which is fine. I knew that was coming. My question to you is how does one deal with that? How does one get themselves in the position? Like if they're not a part of a mastermind group, if they haven't, listened to this podcast before or any of your material, how do they get themselves in a position to combat that very thing? Because it's once that barrier has been broken, man, so much more is possible.
Oh, I understand that. And first of all, so many people are afraid of making mistakes. And again, our biggest fear is being alone, because humans instinctively know if they're alone, they can't survive. So I'm afraid to make a mistake because you won't love me anymore, and then I'll be alone. And that starts really early in childhood. And those fears of being hurt, of being abused, of when people are hypervigilant, when there was a dysfunctional parent. I mean, all those feelings are what are coming into play when you're asking them to step outside of their comfort zone. And can you wave a magic wand and make it go away? No. The person has to say, I'm feeling resistance. I want to do something about it. And they have to understand that it's not a magic wand that makes it go away overnight, that it's a process. It's a process of self-discovery. It's a process of consciousness where you're embracing life in a whole new way. And that fear becomes their teacher. And it's like when someone does a fire walk or a ropes course, and they're facing their fear of death at that moment. And they finally do it. That's that moment you're talking about, when they finally take the step and anything is possible. Some people never do it. I was talking to a guy who's actually a real estate investor, and there were certain things going on, and his wife wanted to move to another city, and he wanted to have his needs known, and he was afraid to have the conversation with his wife. And it has got him totally blocked. So each case is different because, and I could see because of what his father did for a living and his grandfather did for a living, that was all playing into it. So it's like when I work with clients, for some reason, I can very intuitively figure out what's going on. I've been doing this a long time. And it's like the 6 Hollywood plots, and everything is built around that. So once I hear what the problem is, then I can figure out what the family of origin dynamic was, and I can help people see it from another point of view. The problem is they don't know what they don't know. So what they're seeing, like this fear of making mistakes, is all they've ever known, and they don't know how else to look at it.
Wow.
So it's a matter of learning how to re-perceive what you're seeing. And that doesn't happen overnight because, again, at every step, you get the moving stupids, and you have to be willing to work through that. And you've been through it. You happen to be a very dynamic person by nature. Not everybody has that. So I have to take into account the people who are afraid to take 2 steps forward, even if they're going to take 1 step back. And sometimes you just have to hold their hand in a whole different way. I see myself as kind of a nurturing mother. Someone needs to be told they're a good boy or girl and that they're lovable. I mean, at the base of all of it is that everybody wants someone to love them and to tell them they're doing okay.
Yeah, you got it. In so many ways. There's just so much information. You know what, this is going to become like mandatory listening for everybody at the beginning. They're just like, you don't understand. This is what you're dealing with. It's not overly difficult what we do. What is difficult is, or unfamiliar to you, is dealing with yourself and getting yourself to do the actions that are absolutely required. So I'm sure at this point, there's a number of people going, I just got to find out more about this Joan lady and what she's got going on. So if you would, please share with us how can we find out more about what you're up to, grab any particular resource that we think might be helping us, and probably somebody's just going to call you, help me, because at this stage, I'm sure they realize that you understand where you're coming from, what you're talking about, and you probably can shed some light on some things that are holding them back.
Fabulous. My website, prosperityplace.com, is the place to start. I do post my podcast there called The Prosperity Show. My book, Build Your Money Muscles, is like $9.95 on my site. The Kindle edition I've got down to $6.95, and it's a very easy read. It takes 2 hours to read and about a year to do.
We believe you.
People say to me, "Oh, I got to the exercise number 3, and I guess I better get back to it again," because it's going to open up your mind to a whole new way of being, and you will get the moving stupids, guaranteed. And so I have a number of audios on. As a matter of fact, if your audience wants this, I have a bonus available called, it's an audio I did called Healing Your Financial Shame. And so if you go to prosperityplace.com/bonus, you can get a free copy of Healing Your Financial Shame. And I bet you all have a little bit, because you're saying to yourself, I should have done something else. No, whatever you did, and you're good. You're okay. You haven't done anything wrong. So that's available. Or if you just want to go to the site, if you sign up for some of the free stuff there, you'll get on my mailing list. And I have a whole new program coming out in January, and I hope you'll become part of my family.
Indeed. We will definitely make sure that information makes it over to the show notes, guys, on cashflowdiary.com. So you can go there to make sure that you can find all of those links and get over there. At the end of the day, you've heard information that has been helpful to you today, which is amazing. I am grateful that you have come here to be able to express and share with us your genius today, so that others might benefit. Thank you very much.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time to move at the speed of instruction. prosperityplace.com/bonus. You probably should head on over there. You got to start somewhere. You might as well start there and get started now. Don't let the law of diminishing intent grab you again. You know, when you say, "Oh, I'll do that later after I get home. I'll do that." No. Go now. Go right now. And because you know that moving at now o'clock, moving at the speed of instruction is way more beneficial than thinking about you're going to do it later and you might forget. It's been fun talking to you guys soon. I look forward to talking to you again. And until next time.